Well, our crust is done. I'm going to bring it out and let it sit while I make the second part. And the second part goes so quickly in the processor. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to I always separate my eggs into a little cup first, just in case. I've been known to get shell in there, and I just find it much easier to do that first. Now I'm going to quickly zap these. A cup of regular sugar. And put it into this cup so that I can pour it through that spout while it's on. Really do a nice job here. Turn that off for a second. If you have a fresh lemon, you could use the fresh lemon, and I would put some rind in. I always have this frozen lemon juice around in my refrigerator because I use a little bit of lemon juice frequently for things. So for me, this is very handy. But again, if you were using a real lemon, I would certainly add some of the rind, maybe a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half of it. But I'm going to use the lemon. It's real lemon juice, and it is sold in the freezer. And I'm going to use my tablespoon, and it's going to be almost 3. It's going to be 2 tablespoons and almost a third, because that's a half of a third of a cup, and that's what I would be using if I was doing the full recipe. So again, I'm going to put it on. And we're going to let that go for a minute. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour. And now I need to wipe off my tablespoon. Like many bakers, I have multiple sets of measuring spoons and cups, because you'll find it's easier to use a different one than always be cleaning. The same thing with beaters, the same things with bowls. I have additional, and this just calls for a little baking powder, just a 1/4 of a teaspoon, and here it is. And I'm just going to zap that for a minute. There we go. We're just going to pour this over. I'll bring the baked crust over, and you can see. Here's my baked crust. So I'm just going to pour my lemon filling over it. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, it's really very juicy, so some of that is definitely going to go down in between the crust and the pan edges. I'll use my cloth, and now we're going to put this in the oven. I found the crust didn't take the full 20 minutes because it was less than a full recipe. So just keep an eye on it, and I'll keep an eye on this too. Normally, again, 30 minutes if it was a full 13 by 9, but probably less for this. Hi, here we are finishing our lemon squares. Remember, I cooked it in a dish with the foil. If you were going to take it in the dish itself, you couldn't do it my way, because you certainly don't want to take it that way. But if you're going to cut it out and take it on a plate, it would be fine. It's cooled. Now I can lift out the whole thing, and I'm going to put it on a cutting board because I'm going to use a sharp knife. I forget whether I used my big chef's knife or a serrated knife, so I have both. And I told you I was actually going to cut it away from the foil, so I don't have those edges. You can certainly see the edges of lemon squares. Why it's got that dimple there, I have no clue. But I think this is going to do it. It's going to cut right away. I'm going to put confectioner's sugar on it. I have a little strainer here that has a cap on it, so I can keep the sugar in there and it keeps it dry. If you have one that doesn't have a cap, then put a baggie with a rubber band or something to keep the air out of that, because confectioner's sugar will get lumpy. Otherwise, you could just take one of your strainers or something and put some confectioner's sugar in there and do it. As you find, if you come to like baking, you'll buy a few more tools as you need them, and make sure when you do, buy a good quality. Don't try to buy a set of something for $10, which includes everything. You'll find they're flimsy. Do it one at a time for a good price at a store, and you'll have them for years. I'm just going to sprinkle the confectioner's sugar over, and then we're just going to cut. It was harder when I baked professionally. I had to be more careful that the sizes were precise. But I have to say, when I usually cut, I just cut. I'm not a huge measurer. The size you cut it in really depends on the use. If it's going to be the only dessert, then a bigger piece. But if it's going to be one of many, then do smaller pieces, because people can come back and get something else or another piece of this. Lemon squares are great the day they're baked. They're fine the next day. Don't try to keep them beyond that. The lemon just disappears. If you're not going to use them, put them in the freezer. They freeze well. Don't try to mail them to a friend. They just do not keep that well. They're best the day they're baked or the next day. So we're just going to go kind of down the middle here. You can see I'm probably not very good even right now in making sure that they're even, but I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to do... I grew up with squares. My mother is from a small Canadian island called Campobello, and there at every occasion, showers, weddings, things, people would bring squares. I think it's very traditional Canadian, and that would be brownies. That would be any cookie that we think of as a bar cookie. So we're just going to put them on our plate. You can see it comes out very easily. There we go. That's our lemon square recipe. I hope you enjoy it. I hope when you serve it, you'll remember the occasion. Bye-bye.